that crime actually increases as a result of crop burning. So exposure to pollution, crop burning related pollution increases.
An average citizen in Peshawar loses 3 years of their life.
Every year.
And have you seen the recent update which says that they're losing 5 years and Lahoris are losing 7 years?
Zigzag killings are, are cleaner than your bull trench killing, but they're not clean.
Welcome to Front Seat with Climate Change. Today we have a guest who will be speaking on data and its uses in regards to climate change and environment. Data and evidence is one of those things that is completely absent in a lot of policy making in Pakistan. But also these are gaps that will be filled in due time. And the guest we have has been doing a lot of work in this regard. Welcome, Sanval. So Sanval is professor of economics at Colby College in the US, but has also taught for a couple of years at Lahore University of Management Sciences and also my alma mater. So, you speak about it with a little bit of pride. But how are you? How is Lahore dealing with you?
Yeah, thank you for having me on your show, Dawar. Lahore is great. Yeah, I mean, I'm enjoying the fall weather and now anticipating the increase in smog.
What are your thoughts? I would just start off with that the economic conditions in Pakistan and the relation it has with our general environment and what we use on a daily basis is very closely linked. And we've had these ups and downs. I remember in 2019 when you had a similar portion of a year that there was stagflation and we were going to the IMF. The dynamics of environment and academic work were very different, and then you had a boom period where a lot of information was being generated and consumed, and you had some nice policy making coming out as well. What are the conditions right now? Do you think that we are in that sort of situation where priorities have changed and we're back to sort of square one in terms of air quality or climate, whatever work that you've been doing? Do you think that there is a demand for it and consumption of that sort of evidence?
So I mean, before I joined Colby, by the way, I was at LUMS for 6 years. So when I moved back from the US, that was in 2016, is when we had that like massive, this big smog event in the winter of 2016, which became a precursor for my work on air pollution in Lahore. But that's also when a lot of policymakers came under a lot of pressure. So आप लोगों को याद होगा कि there was that smog commission that they made in December 2017. And that was a reaction to a lot of public pressure and then a massive deterioration in air quality or visible deterioration in air quality. और उस वक्त नए monitors भी लगे थे देखने के लिए कि ये air quality levels क्या हैं, etc. So that gave us as a first glimpse into how bad the air quality is.
Do you think that these in our institutions might be better, sort of place to learn from our neighbors or same peer states which have improved air quality? China could be one example, because when China started its journey to clean air, they were not the big hegemonic economic power that they are right now. So it isn't that you need a lot of economic superiority. Has there been any effort to reform the institutions in a way so that not just information but their in general capacity, without even academics coming in, they have their own capacity to generate that information?
बहुत सा जो काम or issues Pakistan में, especially regarding deterioration of environmental quality, I mean those are issues that similar developing countries face, right? India में भी उसी किस्म के मसले हैं, Bangladesh में भी वो मसले हैं, Nepal, which isn't perhaps poorer than its peers in South Asia, लेकिन वहाँ भी ये air quality के और water quality etc. बहुत serious इस किस्म के issues हैं, so they're across the board. अब यहाँ आ जाता है कि कुछ मुल्कों में ज़्यादा काम हो, कुछ ममालिक हैं जहाँ ज़्यादा काम हो रहा है. इंडिया में you're right, the EPIC, for example, जिसका it really now it's a center at the University of Chicago headed by Michael Greenstone and others. अब उनको टाटा से पैसे मिले हुए हैं. There's a big grant and the entire center has that endowment from Tata, and they focus a lot on environmental or addressing environment or looking for evidence-based solutions for environmental issues in India. So air quality पे उनका बहुत काम है. अब वो AQLI भी the air quality life index भी हर साल निकालते हैं, जो हम बहुत से कोट भी करते हैं, showing how the average, how much years an average citizen in a particular country
It keeps on
loses
getting
because
worse
of
every year.
yeah, that's right. Yeah. So,
I
but
know someone
yeah.
who's writing this blog for, I think it was the Tribune or Dawn, and he mentioned that an average citizen in Peshawar loses 3 years of their life.
Every year.
And I'm like, have you seen the recent update which says that they're losing 5 years and Lahoris are losing 7 years? I was like, okay, I need to look at the next version. And it keeps on getting worse every year.
No, it does, yeah. So लेकिन अब issue आ जाता है external validity का. I mean, बहुत सारे interesting काम हो रहा है India में, for example, right? And there's certain things that they're discovering that actually work. जो तुम, this institutional capacity issue that you raised. One way, so India में पहले होता था कि वो audits जो हैं वो firm जो ज़्यादा pollute करती थी companies or industries, वो जाके उनके audits होते थे. But often होता ये था कि there was always room for corruption, like when sort of when an inspector or an auditor, environmental auditor goes to a regulator, वो पैसे दे के जो है तो वो अपनी readings कम करवा लेते थे, right? So then they experimented, and this is some really top-notch economists were on this team. Esther Duflo was part of this project, etc. उन्होंने किया ये कि उन्होंने random audit शुरू कर दिया है firms के, right? And what they discovered is when you like randomize these audits, तो instead of targeting the heavy polluters, अब आप randomize कर रहे हो कहाँ जाके, तो those incentives to actually cheat went down, and so the pollution levels or ये जो industry emissions हैं, they had better outcomes as a result of these random audits, right? So so there was a clear institutional problem there, and by just randomizing audits, they were able to kind of improve outcomes as a result. So we have evidence on that. Question is, ये economics में बहुत deal करते हैं with this, or at least in sort of field experiments and ये applied work, this issue of external validity कि जो India में हो रहा है, would that work in a place like Brazil, or would that work in a place like Pakistan for that matter? Now, these are very, very similar in many ways. Well, Brazil might not be similar to India, but Pakistan to some extent is. It shares a border, is within the same broader region. So, so you can look at sort of secondary data. Either you do replicate a similar study in Pakistan and then generate new evidence. Often that's difficult to do because ये करना बड़ा expensive होता है. अगर आपके पास एक दफ़ा आ गया evidence India से, so you can then try to see whether this, will these results actually hold in settings like Pakistan. And often we have this, ये हमारे पास है evidence कि हाँ, अगर India में काम कर रहे हैं, there's, instead of kind of reinventing the wheel, these are things that we can pick up.
हमारे यहाँ, like Nepal, India, Bangladesh, this is a regional thing that everyone suddenly got a quick idea that भट्टे brick kilns जो हैं वहाँ से बड़ा धुआं आता है और सारे शहरों में जो पूरे शहर की pollution है, पूरे खित्ते की pollution है, भट्टों से ही आती है. So there was this huge sort of interest in upgrading those kilns and sort of moving to a relatively better technology. And remember that you did the paper in this regard for Punjab and published that study as well. So can you tell me a little bit more that how does this work and why is this there's a huge sort of interest in this as well, that technological improvements can reduce sort of emissions, and is there a solid very very solid argument that this should be done?
The history यही है कि वो जब नेपाल में earthquake आया था 2015 में, तो बहुत से जो उनके पुराने भट्टे थे वो नीचे गिर गए, like it was a massive earthquake, so भट्टे जो हैं वो collapse कर गए. But then when they were reconstructing those kilns, they decided they're going to sort of make these zigzag kilns instead. ISIMOD is this organization which is, I believe it's based in Nepal, but heavily involved in sort of climate change and environmental issues in South Asia. So this was their sort of like brainchild in many ways. If we have to set up these brick kilns all over again, might as well do that with like the latest kind of technology. और उसमें वैसे it's not too different from your standard kiln. By the way, जो हमारे standard भट्टे हैं वो 150 साल पुरानी technology है वो. Yeah, so वो zigzag में basically there's a little tweak to the kiln. There, you put a fan which circulates the air better. उसके बाद वो the bricks, it's called zigzag because the bricks within the kiln are arranged in this zigzag fashion so that it takes the air longer to pass through that system or that infrastructure. तो उसकी वजह से वो जो particulate matter होता है उसके अंदर वो because it takes longer to flow through the kiln, तो वो it settles down. Not all of it settles down, like some of it settles down. But the evidence on the zigzag is very mixed. Yeah, we did this study, but like I guess some people quoted it as saying, "Oh yeah, look, zigzag killings work," but like you have to take that with a grain of salt. That wasn't our punchline. Our punchline was, yeah, like zigzag killings are, you know, are cleaner than your bull's trench killing, but they're not clean. It's not a clean technology. You're still burning coal, and you might sort of, so वो deposits नीचे गिर जाते हैं, etc. लेकिन वो जो और उस पे हमारा भी sample size it wasn't like a big sample size. अगर आप across the board evidence देखो, बहुत से zigzags, for example, India में भी हैं, Nepal of course is a case study, अब Vietnam में भी हैं. The evidence on whether it's a clean technology is inconclusive. So I don't think that this is where we need to stop. I think we have to now think about like what are the far more cleaner ways. Karachi में तो अब वो इस्तेमाल ही नहीं करते जो घर में बनते हैं. They use concrete. It has its own issues. Of course, concrete comes from उसकी production में there's a lot of greenhouse gas emissions, which is a different sort of problem than sort of local pollution. I mean, at some point, these are, instead of kind of pushing zigzag killings, we need to think about weighing the costs and benefits of each one of these and seeing which really works in our context.
What have you seen? Are people, and not just people like us, but people who might not have the resources to constantly keep up with air purifiers and masks and whatnot, is there a change in pattern what people are using in terms of protecting themselves? Are they using the masks, or is it just was it just the panic that got them to use it?
Yeah, you're right. So this is a field experiment that we did in Lahore, and we're really excited about it because the paper is just now, the working paper is out, and we're in the process of pitching it to journals. This was one of the first studies to really look at the value of pollution information and avoidance behavior, कि अगर आपको information मिले तो आप अपना behavior pollution को avoid करने के लिए किस तरह change करते हो in a developing country setting. तो उसमें हमने किया ये था, we actually provided, so since it was a field experiment, we had a control group जहाँ किसी को कुछ नहीं मिला, and there was another group where we gave people air pollution forecasts. So लोगों को and this was in a low middle income area in Lahore, ये Walton वाला जो area है उसमें कोई तकरीबन 1000 वो थे households. उसमें से कुछ कंट्रोल ग्रुप में थे, कुछ ये जिसको हम ट्रीटमेंट ग्रुप कहते हैं, जहाँ लोगों को हमने ये एयर पोल्यूशन फोरकास्ट दिए SMS के थ्रू. हर शाम 8 बजे उनको आता था कि आपकी जो अगले दिन आलूदगी की जो वो है पेशगोई वो ये है. और ये हमने there were 3 different sources. I'll skip the details on how we created these forecasts. लेकिन उसका ये था कि पहले तो ये कि do people actually value this information, right? हम बहुत कहते हैं हाँ लोगों को इन्फॉर्मेशन दे दो, इन्फॉर्मेशन, लोगों को एक्चुअली ये इन्फॉर्मेशन जो है वो वैल्यूबल लगती भी है कि नहीं लगती, लाइक क्या पता कि आप एम उनको दे रहे हो SMS के थ्रू, उसके खर्चे आ रहे हैं, आप एयर पोल्यूशन इन्फॉर्मेशन कलेक्ट कर रहे हो मॉनिटर्स लगा के, बट योर सिटीजंस रियली डोंट केयर अबाउट दिस, राइट? तो फिर does the math add up? उसमें what we discovered is actually no, if you give ये information लोगों को दो, they actually really value this. Or this is we did this experiment just before COVID, so 2019, almost roughly 100 rupees. There people were willing to, and this is a low middle income neighborhood, by the way, were willing to pay close to 100 rupees to continue receiving these forecasts for another 3 months. And this is close to about 60% of the cost of 4G internet services, right? So अगर लोग 4G internet खरीद रहे हैं, this is 60%. This is quite a lot. And you scale this up across the entire city, and what I'm saying, this is the average वो willingness to pay, वो जो 100 rupees है, कुछ लोगों की ज़्यादा है, कुछ की कम होगी. You scale this up across the entire city, about 14 million people, the benefits are huge of just providing this information. When people value stuff, you give it to them, people are better off.
I actually met a top bureaucrat once, and this guy was involved in one of the departments relevant to smog control, and he was like, the IQ Air app that we have, the AQI that it shows is not considered in official terms because we've not validated those monitors. But at the same time, he wouldn't go out for his morning jog if the value was high. So on a personal level, he believed in those values, but he did the avoidance as well. But officially, they could not really make use of that data. I think that has changed now because these guys are coming up with the similar low-cost sensors and validating them with the reference standard monitors. One thing that I'm curious about is that when the avoidance happens, so I'm assuming the argument for subsidizing this in order to lead to avoidance is that there's a public health benefit. So have you been able to quantify that, or is there an example from anywhere else in the world that we can quote to people that this would be a benefit of this?
Yeah, no, that's up to this is a बहुत ही this thriving area of research now. पहले हमारे पास बहुत सा evidence था on direct health impacts of exposure to air pollution. But if you exposed to air pollution, तो उससे it increases asthma, it increases it has heart-related issues. बहुत सा ये हमारे पास direct health effects के वो हैं क्या कहते हैं का evidence है. What we didn't know was, or we still, the evidence it's hard to kind of estimate this, is कि ये जो exposure to impacts relationship है, ये क्या linear है, ये जिसको या ये अगर छोटे levels पे ज़्यादा impact होता है या ज़्यादा होता है, अगर बहुत ही बुरी air quality हो तो फिर उससे impacts क्या वाकई उतनी magnitude से बढ़ जाते हैं जितनी magnitude से air quality ख़राब हो रही है. अब ये जो relationship है इस पे evidence इतना strong नहीं है, but it's often difficult to kind of estimate this. But what we do know is like अगर air quality levels जब बहुत से even in the first world in developed countries अगर वो air quality level standards are within standards उस वक्त भी लोगों पे उसका असर हो रहा होता है. So it's we have tons of evidence on the harmful effects of exposure to air pollution, but now what we have is new evidence on non-health effects, right? ये cognitive ability पे कि आपकी both long term and short term on very polluted days school children perform poorly on like cognitive tasks. अगर ज़्यादा pollution हो और आप test ले रहे हो, for example, you might just do poorly on that test compared to like if you were if you took the same test on a cleaner day. अब उसके तो फिर ये वो अगर आप एक टेस्ट में फेल हो गए हो let's say तो वो तो फिर उसके sort of accumulate होते रहते हैं वो जो costs हैं. So aggregating those, I mean उसमें there's a lot of uncertainty, but fact is that adds up and that's a lot. उसके अलावा भी recently एक paper आया है, former alum student I believe just wrapped up his PhD at Michigan State. उसका जो paper है वो दिखा रहा है कि crime actually increases, and I think that's data from Pakistan that he's used. वो crop burning वाला data लेके he's demonstrating that crime actually increases on as a result of crop burning. So exposure to pollution, crop burning related pollution increases crime. So वो भी another sort of non-health effect. Stock market decision making is affected by exposure to like if pollution levels are high. So it's not just the direct health impacts, it's also these like indirect health effects, right, on cognition.
We've had these examples, cities like Dubai, Bangkok, very, very big cities, very in some cases a lot of critique about them, that the way that they've developed is possibly not the best of the urban outcomes that they could have had. But these cities have now cleaned up their act in ways that we could not imagine. The livability is better. Bangkok issues warnings at 100 AQI. And at the same time, you have a massive deployment of public transport in both cities like Dubai and Bangkok as well. And these are cities which initially read the situation possibly much earlier than we did for our cities. But at the same time, I keep on coming back to the same issue that maybe in our development trajectory, there will be at some point accumulation of government's own resources that can be deployed. Do you think that is that the point, or we also have this model of debt-funded development, which is also happening, and by the way, that with the air quality monitors that we're going to purchase is going to come from World Bank's money. The standards that we're going to revise is going to come from World Bank's money. The institutional capacity that we're increasing is also coming from World Bank's money. So Are we still going to just use this model, or should we be accelerating towards that sort of accumulation of resources, which eventually leads to the larger change that we want to have?
No, that's a good point, and it ties back to what I was saying earlier. You're right. You have to have your own capacity to deal with this issue. But then of course there are trade-offs, right? So बहुत सारे development में आपके often people prioritize health and education, even infrastructure over the environment. तो ये मेरा white paper था for the IGC and then the Mehboob Haq Research Center, जिसमें we basically show कि Environmental Protection Department Punjab का जो है is tasked with being the environmental regulator, including that's the institution with the mandate to look after air quality in the province. I mean, they barely get what was it, 0.06% or 0.6% of like the annual budget. उसमें उन्होंने monitoring and enforcement करनी है across the entire province, not just Lahore, right? So the money for this is being channeled through the Environmental Protection Department. But then, so clearly this is revealed preferences, right? The province environment ko, health or education ka jo budget is actually much larger than what you're seeing from the environment. So isliye mera khayal hai कि if you reframe the problem as both an environmental catastrophe or calamity plus a serious public health emergency, so usme you're able to then kind of share resources across these across sort of the health sector and the environment sector. I mean, you can't just rely on the World Bank to bail you out, or of course, some support and capacity building matters and it helps. Like in the long run, you have to be self-sufficient in addressing these issues, right? And that basically means, sort of acknowledging that this has serious costs for society, really undermines and reduces welfare in the long run. Hence, we need to channel more resources towards countering it.
Yeah, I completely agreed. I think we'll wind it up, and I just have a couple of fast phrases for you.
Okay.
You can come up with anything that comes to your mind. So number 1, climate change.
Adaptation.
Okay, that's a good one. Karakoram.
I always think about K2.
Okay, yeah, that's fair. Smog.
Masks.
Okay, that's good enough. I think we'll wind it up here, and thank you so much for your time. This was very knowledgeable and good to get a peek inside the work that you're doing well in advance of its release as well. I think we might, have more experts come in and talk about it, but thank you for setting the stage for it. A lot of the context that you've provided was very beneficial for all the viewers.
Thank you for having me on your show, Dawar. Appreciate it.
Take care. Thank you for joining us, and we'll be back with more episodes.